Well, now on Radio 3, and at this time every evening from now until Friday, we're broadcasting a tribute to the tenor Luciano Pavarotti, who died in September this year. Here's Sean Rafferty.
He was simply a phenomenon, a name that everybody knew, a voice, a force of nature it's been called, that enthralled his multitudinous admirers, from opera-goers to pop fans. The death of Luciano Pavarotti in September this year was a major news event across the world and a genuine cause for mourning. And that voice, well, heard by so many through his recitals, his appearances on the operatic stage, his open-air concerts, which were as big and popular as any pop event, especially when he got together with people like Sting and Bono of U2. Then there are the recordings, a huge legacy still with us, Bellini, Donizetti, Puccini and Verdi. All this week we'll be hearing Pavarotti's voice in a range of roles.
Just 10 years after he won the Achille Peri competition in Reggio Emilia and made his debut there as Rodolfo. I went to see him at his home just down the road in Modena. He was born in Modena, grew up there, had his first lessons there from the tenor Arrigo Pola, and it was there that his father, who was, and indeed still is, a tenor, encouraged him to try his luck as a professional singer. We talked about his career, about his technique, about his teachers, and about the roles he sings. But the first question I asked him was there a specific moment when he realized he was gifted with a voice that was out of the ordinary?
I think so. I think at the age, I would like to say, of 15, 16, one day I went to see a movie of Mario Lanza. I think it was The Great Caruso. And I come home and I begin to imitate in front of the mirror the arias that I hear there. And I realized then I did have a voice, still, because I was alto when I was a kid. I did not really stay all that time without singing. I have always sung. But my voice at the age of 15 turned from boy to man, more or less. I think it was around 15. Of course, I think I was singing 1/3 higher than the right key. The voice was very tiny, but it was there, and I really, by imitation, I think I began to sing like that for 1 or 2, 3 years, until at the age of 20, precisely the 31st of January 1956, I take my first lesson from Maestro Pola. And I realized to have a voice because I was able to sing 2 or 3 arias without having big trouble, without choking. Of course, I repeat, the voice was very skinny, without any passaggio, but it was there. It was really there.
You were very lucky that your father was also a singer, was interested in singing and played you records.
I was lucky because first my father, yes, he was a tenor, so on the radio you hear just the voice of tenors. And the first record that he brought home, they were a record of tenor, of course. And tenor, again, is my teacher, my first teacher. So I was very, very lucky because I did have a guide to listen, to see how the things are right or how the things are wrong from them. And I think because they do not have a tenor who is the teacher, who is closing the sound. Because by imitation, everybody should be able to do that. And I was very lucky, I have to say then. And then I was lucky again, even with my second teacher. Then he was Maestro Campogagliani, then he was a teacher of so many singers before me. During my period, even Miss Freni was there singing, and many other.
Tebaldi,
Bergonzi, like a baritone, and many other. And this maestro, he opened another window. I think he made me think that the voice is beautiful, but it's not everything. So we began to talk about phrasing and how I would like to feel to do one phrase. And so he says, don't do like you hear from the record, do like you think it will be good. You are an elementary school teacher, you know what you are saying, try to say in the way then you think is right for a person in the situation in which he is singing And that was a fantastic help, in my opinion. To try to be true, to try to be with a good technique are the two friends of mine. Then they accompany me in these 30 years of generally success, sometimes not, but generally success.
I suppose the first thing people would say about your singing is this absolutely impeccable legato, also allied with this clarity of words.
But that is something else. I have to give these to a man, then of course he's dead now, and he's called Janis Strasser from Glyndebourne. And that guy, he began to tell me legato. I was very obviously doing by myself in my phrasing, but not consciously. It was something unconscious. And so every time I was, let's say, barking certain note, he says, no, it's not like that. It should be in the way then the phrase is better in the style, the sound more continuous, and the voice then bigger than it sounds if you make not legato. He said that in 1964. But I think I really become in total command probably 10 years after. A very different thought. I say, why is he doing such a long phrase and I am unable to do it, then I am 3 times bigger than him. And so I began to think about it in that direction until I did have another fortune to go with John Sutherland in 1965 in the Australian tour, who brought us together for 1 month of rehearsal and 3 other months of performances. So 4 months together with John Sutherland, observing her and singing with her constantly. I think that was, for me, the real final touch, to be sure to possess something. So I was singing before or a beautiful performer, or a performer, then you can say, without the total control of the voice, I thought. Instead was the total control of the diaphragm, which is totally different. But I did not know that. I say then I was very lucky that I met all these people, but I think my best luck of all is that I was born with the desire to learn, and I am still doing now, and I will still do until I am going to do my profession.
The words of a true pro. There, of course, he was vying in breadth of phrase and suppleness of legato with Joan Sutherland in the duet from the first act of Lucia di Lammermoor. That was one of the operas they sang together on the Australian tour of 1965, without doubt a significant milestone in Pavarotti's career, as had been his unscheduled Covent Garden debut in 1963, substituting for Giuseppe Di Stefano, not to mention Mozart's Idamante at Glyndebourne in 1964. Nowadays, of course, he sings Idomeneo himself. But it was by no means plain sailing at the start. The 1961 debut in Reggio Emilia was a success, but the big work didn't follow, until in 1962 he auditioned for a very important conductor.
I thought then, with so many fantastic tenors around, and we can count 20 first class, you have a beautiful voice. I make the audition in Milan. The important person stopped the audition and he talked to me for a couple of hours, and it was very good, but he did not give me anything to sing. And the others say I was very, very good, and so and so. And finally, I go to Rome because I have to make an audition for Maestro Serafin in Rigoletto. And so I go there, and 4 o'clock is the appointment. Of course, I am there around 1 o'clock on the bar downstairs, waiting for 3 hours, having a cup of chamomile. And I think I have never drunk so many chamomile in my life. And I went upstairs, and this old man, because he was 82, I think, at that time, he says to the maid, "Bring a glass of water for the young boy here." And I say, "I have drunk so much that I am not thirsty." He said, "But you will be." So I said, "Well, I don't know what is meaning this." And we begin to sing Rigoletto from the first note until "E la mi fu rapita." And then I stop and I say, I would like to have a glass of water if possible. And when we begin after that, La Donna Mobile, quartet of Rigoletto, in the quartet he says, listen, you do very well, but when you are going to come to Palermo to sing for me the performances, you are going to sing with this portamento here and this portamento there. I say I will do exactly what you want. Don't worry, you should take me. And that was, he told me yes right there during the audition.
You mentioned portamento, and you have written that you feel it should be used very sparingly.
Portamento, he says, Bella figlia dell'amore. And I was doing Bella figlia dell'amore. And he says, no, portamento, amore. And he says, you know why? I said, no, I don't know why. He says, because he's joking. Because he's joking with the knocker that he has already paid for. And it's true. He was absolutely right. He said, that is the pleasure of a man who likes to joke, to like to fake a conquer of a woman for whom he has already paid.
So portamento has a dramatic purpose.
Yes, a purpose and this precise point.
The Palermo cast for Rigoletto in 1962 was a good one, but this was not the happiest of occasions.
It was not very pleasant because, unfortunately, the baritone was Bastianini dying of cancer, and so all of us did know that. It was not pleasant for that reason, but Gianna D'Angelo was there, beautiful American soprano, and more than everything, Maestro Serafin was there encouraging me all the time. And it was, for me, a remarkable victory. Then finally is giving to my poor ego the feeling then you can be somebody. Because a person like Serafin, he did trust you. Of course he trusts me because Rigoletto is a very difficult role and he doesn't have any other. But still, I think I was very lucky because when everybody realized then Serafin took me, of course my manager began to spread the news and everybody else, then I was immediately busy.
When you started singing, and people still think so now, there are categories of tenors, as the tenore di grazia, the tenore di forza, and so on, lyric tenor, but you have sung so many different kinds of roles, so do you not recognize those categories? Do you think there is just a tenor?
No, I was born like a listener in the period in which they were categoria di voci. So we did have light tenor like Schipper and Krauss, and we have a lyric tenor like Di Stefano and Gigli, and we have a dramatic tenor like Bergonzi and Corelli, and the for Ballo in Maschera. I would like to say a role made from a very mature lyric voice, not a lyric voice at the beginning, a lyric voice at the maximum of expansion.
A lyric voice at the maximum of expansion. That was Pavarotti as Riccardo in his first recording of Un ballo in maschera, made in 1970 and conducted by Bruno Bartoletti. As he says, it's the role that he feels suits his voice best. But is it perhaps also one ideally suited to his volatile, expansive stage personality?
The personality even I like it very much. But I think the vocal challenge of this role is really the most important. Personality role, I prefer Elixir of Love, because it's such a charming character. He's such a different character than any other role that you do on the stage. And vocally speaking, if you sing in the way that Caruso sang at that time, insulting him, now we will not make, will not feel insulted for this word. He just said that, in his opinion, he did not like the way in which he sang the role. So changing his life because he says, Naples doesn't like me, I go away and I will come back just to eat spaghetti and to die. And it's exactly what he did. He never went back to sing.
But during those 20 years, a lot had happened. He had a busy recording schedule with Decca, and started a pretty hectic international to that, 1979, and still in San Francisco, Radamés in 1981. That's an extraordinary journey of exploration into the heavier tenor repertory in just 10 years, and a meticulously well-planned one. It was especially interesting to talk him through that list of roles, and others, and ask him how he felt about them on looking back. 75, when you first did Manrico, you were then 40.
Yeah.
And that was the right time, you thought?
But if you don't do a role like that when you are 40, you don't do anymore. Because 40, the voice, I think, is at the best. You have still a body very, very, very strong. The voice, generally, I mean, at least mine, very healthy. And you have the power to go through some difficult passage like Trovatore has, because it's a very low opera. It's probably the lowest opera that Verdi has written. And then there is that top Everest of La Pira. So
then there are the roles that you have sung once and dropped. Calaf, I think you sang once on stage.
That was the destiny, because I sang one, and I did have 3 or 4 engagements. I think one with New York, one with Chicago, one with Covent Garden, the other, and I canceled because I made the movie. So that movie then was not a great success. Probably at least it came in the right moment to save my voice. I would like to do again that opera before I finish my profession. And it done before because I had the aria and Verdi wrote for the Russian tenor, and who made the role, in my opinion, completely different. And for that reason, I think it was positive. But I have done once on the stage, and I will not try again. First of all, because I don't think it was a great feeling that I did have singing the role. And secondly, because you need 3 colleagues, then they should be colossal. And I do not really see when and how, Suppose even when they are there, can be very difficult to put all 4 together.
Mm-hmm. Then finally, Radamés, 81, which has become one of your big successful roles.
I think Radamés was a very, very beautiful success all over when I have done, and is an opera that I am ready to do again every moment. Very, very beautiful satisfaction.
Were you ever frightened of it when you started?
I am still now very much afraid of the first aria, because it's beginning like that when you are still cold. It's an aria very atypical of Verdi. There is nothing to do with the Verdi arias. This doesn't even seem that he has written this aria. The difficulty is because you never breathe. From the beginning to the end, there is not 1 minute in which you can make twice this. You have just once, and then it becomes a little too much.
You had the right teachers. They've seen you through.
Daughter of Regiment in French, because I thought in Italian is abominable, the translation. And I think my French is not great. It's good. I like my voice when I am singing French, but I don't think so. I try to study Werther, and in the middle I say, no. I prefer to spend time to study Otello.
The Otello experience, again, the worst possible circumstances. You were ill, Maestro Scholti was ill, but finally, after the 4 performances, you were happy.
Such a phenomenal piece of music, then I was unable to say no, even the first day that I was with the fever, choking, struggling. It's too important piece of music. But we have done a beautiful Otello. Then I thought it was a miracle when I hear the piece that we put together. Like the Chicago orchestra do not allow it to repeat any little pieces. So what you have on that record is the real true 4 performances, some pieces from one, some pieces from others. First 2 or 3 years of career on the stage of singer, I think generally is very good, and then it becomes very difficult. In another word, like my manager says, make money is very easy, make a career is very difficult today. The singers are so many of one level. Of an higher level, it's very difficult in demand, and so when we begin the theater, they were 1/4 than they are today. And The conductor at that time, they did have more time to give to the singer, studying the role on the stage with the orchestra. Now probably you don't even have time to repeat twice Di Quella Pira in a new production.
Only too true, sadly. So how does he counsel the youngsters in his competition? For instance, we in Britain think of Rodolfo in La Bohème as a deceptively heavy role, one that has brought more than one young tenor's career to a premature end. Yet that was the role with which Pavarotti made his own debut, and he's still very much around 30 years later. What advice does he give to those who auditioned for him today?
I always say that the young singer should not have a heavy role. And I have an example, for example, in my competition, not this one, the last one. He was a tenor, I think with a very pretty voice, then he came with...
The length of Pavarotti's still burgeoning career is ample reward for those years of slog, perfecting his voice and his technique while earning a living as an elementary school teacher in his native city. We tend to think of a star singer's life as one of relentless glamour, but it isn't. It's slog, slog, slog. And so, to the final question. How much work do you still do to keep your voice?
Well, to keep the voice, more or less the work is the same in quality, more in quantity, because the instrument, I think after a while you will decide then it's no more exciting.
So this is something you do every day?
And every night, and sometimes in the middle of the night, because you come home very late sometimes.
What sort of relationship do you have with your voice? I mean, do you regard it as absolutely part of yourself?
I think my voice is my possessor. I am the servant of this instrument. I enjoy life because I am an extrovert person, but I will enjoy much more if I have not to serve this instrument. But in the meantime, for what she is asking me, and I say she like a person, for what she is asking from me in terms of sacrifice, she gave me such an incredible pleasure. Then at the end of the evaluation thing, I decided then I have to do like that. Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow evening, here on BBC Radio 3.